I've always found it a little bit weird that 2016 is the year that always gets referenced when we talk about like full glam makeup, because the makeup we were wearing in 2017 and 2018 looked pretty similar, if not more bold and more glamorous. So why do we only call back to the year 2016? Well, when I was prepping for this video, I realized it's probably because we all have PTSD from 2017 and 2018. And if you were part of the beauty community at the time, I know you know what I'm talking about, but if you were not, don't worry, because today we are going to relive it. Okay, so this is kind of a part 2 to a video that I posted a few months back about 2016 lore. And I specifically mentioned in that video that I felt like 2016 really set the stage for a turning tide in the beauty community, and everything kind of just fell apart after that. So today is the follow-up to explain what happened next. And I debated continuing to go sequentially, like year by year, but I feel like it actually makes more sense to lump 2017 and 2018 together. And when I was doing the outline for this video, I realized that so many prominent and important launches happened in 2017. Like when we're getting into the big, major, standout beauty product launches, 2017 was really heavy with that. But when we're getting into, I hate to use the word drama, but that's the real word here. When we're getting into the drama, like that was all 2018. And I really feel like these 2 years together left people so disillusioned with the beauty community, at least the one that exists here on YouTube. If you're new here, my name is Kelly. I love talking all things beauty. Be sure to subscribe. Okay, we're gonna start with 2017, but to do so, I think we need to mentally transport ourselves back to that time. And I wanna paint just like a very broad picture of what was happening on the internet and specifically on YouTube. And a little bit on the other apps like Instagram and Snapchat, because Snapchat was pretty prominent in this time as well. TikTok did not yet exist. Those 3, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, like they really were king at the time. And I mentioned in the 2016 video that that was the first time we really started seeing influencing as a job. And we started seeing people make full careers out of this. And that really peaked around 2017, 2018. Like that was the height of what I'm gonna call flex culture. Get ready with me in my Bentley video, or like, look at my LA mansion. Sharing lots of designer bags, designer purchases, going on luxury trips. Like influencers were really bold with sharing their lifestyles and how glamorous and expensive and unattainable they were. And at the time, audiences didn't quite hate it yet. They were starting to, but at the time, I think they were more intrigued by this because, again, this is the first time we're really seeing this. We're seeing normal people that live very relatable lives completely transform and showcase this like brand new life before our eyes. And it's interesting to speak about this through a 2025 lens because I think relatability sells a bit better these days. Maybe not as much today, but the years that succeeded 2017, 2018, 2019, we started craving more authenticity, vulnerability, relatability. But in this time, like it was kind of fun to watch, like a reality TV show online, because a lot of these influencers were like best friends, so we thought, with each other in real life, though we've kind of come to learn maybe some of these relationships were PR relationships. I mean, some of them might have been real, but we were watching these people hang out as friends. It was like a reality television experience that we were watching through YouTube videos on our phones. And we saw this big time in the beauty community. We were seeing a lot of major friendships emerge, and as we know, they pretty much all fell out years later, but we will get there. But I also want to call out that 2017 was actually the year that Emma Chamberlain started her YouTube channel. And I know that probably sounds irrelevant to the conversation here of the beauty community on YouTube because she is not a beauty creator, but Emma Chamberlain has had such a big impact on social media and the evolution of different content styles. And I think she really kicked off the craving of more relatable and authentic content that, like I said, wasn't really the norm in 2017, 2018. Like a lot of the content we were seeing even outside of the beauty community was like, I want to say the first iteration of rage bait. I don't know if that's a fair description, but I'm thinking of like the Paul brothers doing crazy things, like being incredibly problematic, but still getting a ton of views. And then from that, a ton of money. Like it was really a time of extremes. Okay, but now that you're in the mental headspace here, let's talk about the makeup. Okay, we know the trends, they kind of carry over from what we talked about in the 2016 video, but it's glam, it's bold, mink lashes, liquid lipsticks, highlighters, full coverage, full glam, like you know the look. But some launches, did you know? These Stila Glitter and Glow eyeshadows came out in 2017. For some reason, I thought those launched even further back, but no, it was that year. And I remember like anybody was using those. Like, we were obsessed with them. Like, I remember wanting to get my hands on those so badly. The way those were talked about, like, you had to own that product. I will say that like super sparkly look really differs from what's popular today, even though I do think there's a resurgence in a sparkly eye look today. But the 2025 version is like a scattered look with a pretty transparent base and then just some like random glitter particles. But back then it was about being as metallic, as extreme, as high impact sparkly as humanly possible. Even sometimes at the expense of performance, which we will get to. That's a spoiler. Okay, it was also the year Urban Decay came out with the Naked Heat. You know, they just continued on with that Naked series. People got progressively a little bit less excited about each Naked palette release, but I do feel like this one was well received because reds and like bright orange, very warm tone shadows were all the rage. Speaking of, this was ColourPop's first eyeshadow palette, and it was the Yes Please palette. I remember being obsessed with the Yes Please palette. Like, people loved that one. It had like a poppy yellow in here. Like, here's where we're starting to get into more color. It's not just the reds and oranges. We're getting a little bit of yellow. Morphe was like on top of their game 2017 and 18, but this was when they gave us the 3502, the second iteration of the well-loved, much obsessed over original 350, but they also launched their Jaclyn Hill palette. As we know, they do many more collabs with Jaclyn down the road, but this was the very well-loved Jaclyn Hill palette. Not every other collaboration was as well received, but this one people really liked. This one might surprise you, but this was when Charlotte Tilbury launched the contour wands and the highlighter wands. These, I have to say, didn't get that much traction in 2017. I feel like they actually really gained popularity years later. Don't get me wrong, they were loved in 2017, but I feel like it was a more niche appreciation from the luxury beauty lovers, specifically in that space. I don't think they had the same widespread appeal as other contour products at the time, and contouring was huge. We will get there. But I remember actually these weren't even super well received by everyone. A lot of people disliked the little puffball applicator, which is so funny to say today through a 2025 lens, because years later when they got super popular, every single brand launched their version, and now the puffball applicator is like so popular, and it's mostly thanks to the popularity of that product. But originally it was kind of polarizing. Not everyone liked it. But speaking of contour, again, this was the contour craze, and this was when KKW started and launched the contour sticks. These, I'm also gonna say, I was gonna say were polarizing, but the better answer is probably that they were not well liked. Everyone was like, there's no product in this. This looks like, I think people were intrigued because Kim Kardashian was one of the main players that really made contouring so popular. Her and Mario, and that like very signature, very chiseled look. So people wanted to achieve that Kim Kardashian look. And I will say, I don't think she was as disliked in 2017 as she is today. I think that family's always been controversial, but at the time, people were more intrigued, I'll say, you know? On the drugstore side, the Wet n Wild Photo Focus Foundation, do you remember this? It had like a paddle applicator to it. When I was prepping for this video, I'm finding all the launches, I'm like going back, watching like 2017 best of videos, trying to just like figure out what came out that year. When I remembered that product, I swear to you, I could smell it. I was like, it transported me back. I can still, even thinking about it now, I can smell it. The way it smelled like paint. And I remember we all were just like, yeah, no, it smells like paint, but it's only $5, so I can get over that. And it worked really well. Like, I remember going through multiple bottles of that. It was a beautiful formula, but 2017. Inarguably, the most influential launch of 2017 was the brand Fenty Beauty, and specifically their Pro Filter foundation, which launched with 40 shades. And I know I say that and you hear it in our 2025 ears and it sounds unremarkable because most brands do launch 40 shades at the time, but I cannot even emphasize how like monumental this was in 2017. There was so little accessibility when it came to shade ranges. And even still today in 2025, like there is a long ways to go, especially when it comes to products outside of foundation and concealer. Like there's not nearly enough range in things like blush, bronzer. But in 2017, like Fenty kind of broke the internet with this, and they set a new standard for brands moving forward of like what we would allow and what we would not. And I also want to say that while Fenty wasn't the first celebrity beauty brand, It was one of the first brands to reach such a high status. You know, it launched at Sephora, which made sense because it was made by Kendo, which is a beauty incubator owned by LVMH, who also owns Sephora. So like, yeah, that made sense. But it was one of the first truly highly successful celebrity beauty brands that really kicked off this celebrity beauty brand boom that we got years later. But what was also happening was the boom of influencer brands. Now there are even more that we're going to talk about when we get to the 2018 segment. But a big one I want to mention is Laura Lee's beauty brand, Laura Lee Los Angeles. This year she launched the Cat's Pajamas palette. I remember this one was not super well received. It didn't make a ton of sense. It was like cat's pajamas, it had nothing to do with cats, it had like flowers on it. People didn't really get it. But what's interesting is that her brand actually just closed down a few months ago, but it was originally launched in 2017. This was also a year we started to see direct-to-consumer brands coming into major retailers. Both Morphe and Ofra came into Sephora. These were brands like technically Morphe had like a brick and mortar store, but you know what I'm saying here. We were starting to see this introduced more and more in bigger beauty retailers. And again, just to paint the picture here, like the 2010s really were the peak of the direct to consumer brand, like the Warby Parker, the Allbirds, the Glossier. That's a great beauty example. You know, they didn't come into Sephora until years later, but this was really the peak of like direct to consumer brands. And now we're starting to see that pivot to these brands actually being in major beauty retailers. And like I said, Morphe was really at the top of their game here. We were starting to have a little bit of mistrust in Morphe because, as I mentioned in the 2017 video, that's when we got the iconic video from Stephanie Nicole calling out Morphe for white labeling. So the public perception was starting to shift, but I will say they were still highly successful in 2017 and 18. This was also around the time where we started seeing the frequency of launches pick up in a major way. Like, we really have ColourPop to thank for this because they were one of the first brands to really introduce basically a fast fashion model into beauty. They had something new like every single week, and we started seeing other beauty brands try to keep up with that pace and release things more frequently and faster and faster. And that's something we still see obviously to this day, but it really picked up in 2017 and 2018. Like, I was going back to watch different videos from creators that came out in this time just to like put myself in the headspace and remember things. And when it was like purchase or pass or like will I buy it type of videos, everyone was saying like brands are coming out with so many products so much. Like, people were really talking about it at the time. 2017 was also the year that we started seeing that shift towards more inclusivity in beauty. I even found an article that Elle wrote in 2017 titled "The Beauty Industry Took Strides Towards Inclusivity in 2017. We still have a long way to go, but it's a great start." But again, I really attribute a lot of this to Fenty. Truly, the best way I can describe it is like there was a pre-Fenty and a post-Fenty. And the overall trends we were seeing really revolved around like shock value, okay? Especially on Instagram. People, first of all, contouring with everything. Oh my gosh, contouring with my shoe, contouring with my purse, contouring with a knife. On YouTube a little bit, but especially on Instagram, I went back and was watching videos from Jackie Aina. She used to do a video of like trends that need to die every single year. And I watched her 2018 video, and she specifically mentioned creators changing the thumbnails on their Instagram videos. So you would get this like really juicy click-worthy thing. Like, the video would have nothing to do with what the thumbnail was. Like, in the thumbnail, you would see them holding foundation and like a knife. And then the video is literally just them applying the foundation, like the knife doesn't come in at any point. Or it was always like knives, fires, like they were lighting things on fire, but then like really not using it lit on fire. Like, it was just for the shock value to force someone to click on it. Like, clickbait ruled at this time. Remember in the 2016 video when I mentioned this was the time that viewers were starting to become disillusioned with influencers. They were starting to get frustrated with them about things like undisclosed sponsorships, things like flex culture. I also think this like overwhelming use of clickbait and like clickbaity tactics also really started to weigh on the viewers. Like, they were starting to get annoyed. Like, it's very annoying to click on a video and be like, how are they gonna use this knife? And then they never use the knife. And you're like, okay, you just wasted my time. And it really was just like crazy for the sake of being crazy. The wavy brow trend, or people just doing weird things with their brows, truly for no reason other than to just like make a clickbaity video. This was also the time of like the lip enhancing sucking device. Do you remember this? Everyone was buying this. It was like super viral. You put it on your lips and you suck on it and it plumps your lips up. People were getting like bruised lips. Like, Oh my gosh. And then what started to grow out of this building frustration towards influencers, drama channels, tea channels, whatever you want to call them. Oh my gosh, they really exploded around this time. People whose content was like strictly there to cover what was happening with these influencers. And I have to say, I think it speaks to how popular and prominent these creators were at the time, because I don't know if those same types of like drama channels would be as relevant and viewed today, but people were just so immersed in the lives of these creators. They were so enthralled with their friendships. They were craving all of the tea. A lot of creators were being exposed for racist backgrounds, like Jeffree Star, which led him to post a video about this, basically taking no accountability and making himself the victim. This was also the year that Jaclyn Hill posted a Snapchat story of Kathleen Lights saying the N-word. Even more things happened later in 2018, but we will get there. 2017 was also the year of the subculture scandal. And maybe it sounds dramatic to call that a scandal, and you might have been thinking, oh, why didn't she mention subculture in the major products section? But that's because it really deserves its own section, because I cannot even emphasize how big of a deal the subculture palette was. And again, like I've said with so many of these topics, it sounds so unremarkable to speak about in 2025, like people cared that much. They did. They cared. Like, there are a few experiences in my life that like I can remember exactly where I was when it happened, but I can remember exactly where I was when the first couple subculture videos came out. Like I'm transported into my room watching them. Like, you're going from one video to another, you're reading the comments, everyone's talking about it. Okay, let me back up and let me tell you in case you don't know. So the context here is, like I said in the 2016 video, Modern Renaissance was a well-loved palette in the beauty community. I also mentioned in that video, I really think it was like the last relevant palette. Like, that was the last palette that every single person had, and it was like everywhere, everything. It maintained relevancy for years. Like, Modern Renaissance put Anastasia Beverly Hills on the map. They had some traction, they were well liked, but Modern Renaissance like skyrocketed the brand. So people were sitting here waiting like, okay, what is coming next? And they followed it up with the subculture palette, which people were intrigued. You know, we were dipping our toes into color. People liked the color story. I guess it was a bit mixed, but like overall, like it's not like too colorful. I think it was still approachable for the style of makeup we were doing at that time. And the context I really need to give here is that the formula for Modern Renaissance was so well loved. It was high pigment, but it was easy to work with. And that was the difference with subculture. It was high pigment, but it was almost impossible to work with. It was actually way more high pigment than subculture. It was so highly pigmented that people were saying you just could not blend it. But beyond blendability, what really made this controversial was the kick up. So to give some context, most eyeshadow palette formulas that launched prior to this era were a lot more firmly pressed into the pan. You didn't get as much kick up. And while Modern Renaissance had some kick up to it, it was nowhere near what people were getting from a subculture. Like, people were hitting pan on the first try, which I will say was very exaggerated for the video's sake. But the powderiness of the palette was a huge topic. But the way the reviews came out, we first saw a couple of creators do tutorials and share reviews of the palette that actually liked it. And then we started getting this second wave of people trashing the palette. The titles were like, WTF, like worst palette ever. And then what made this such big drama was A, people were shocked because they loved Modern Renaissance so much and it was like devastating that subculture wasn't good. But B, and probably more important and what made it more dramatic, was that then everyone was furious with the influencers that said they liked it. They were being called liars. Like, people were like, you're no longer trustworthy. How could I believe you? This is the worst palette to ever exist and you gave it a good review. It sounds so weird to talk about it today because it's like, okay, a palette was a bad formula. That really rocked the community. Yes, it did. It really, truly did. But let's move in to 2018 because I really feel like this was the year the beauty community imploded. Like, it has never been the same. 2018 was the year of Dramageddon 1, which we will get to. You probably also know that later on we got Dramageddon 2. And I feel like especially after that one, people were just like done with the beauty community. But I really think 2018, so many people became disillusioned. Like I said in that 2016 video, the seedlings were planted then, it was building in 2017, and 2018, was when it all fell apart. Like, it imploded. Okay, as I said, I don't think there were as many standout launches this year. Some big ones I want to call out. The James Charles Morphe palette, obviously huge. Like I said, Morphe was really at their peak in this era. I will also say, I think the success that James Charles had with this palette was part of what contributed to Dramageddon 2.0, which happened the following year. Anastasia Beverly Hills really tried to come back. They gave us 3 palettes this year, and what's so surprising is these 3 palettes were actually really well loved. It was the Soft Glam, the Norvina, and the Sultry. And these palettes got great reviews, and yet I still don't think they really saved the reputation of Anastasia Beverly Hills. I have to say, I think Anastasia Beverly Hills really fell off like years later, and I blame private equity for that, but I feel like they had a really hard time coming back from subculture. Like, don't get me wrong, these 3 launches were well loved, and they had other launches this year, like lots of glow kits, like everything was like highlighter sparkles. They were still well liked palettes. Like, people just could not get the taste of subculture out of their mouth. ABH was kind of tainted after that. Another launch that, again, I don't think was as popular this year as it ended up being in subsequent years, but this was when Charlotte Tilbury launched the Hollywood Flawless Filter. Again, I think it had like a niche following of like luxury beauty lovers that really appreciated the brand. But I don't think a lot of Charlotte Tilbury products were as loved in this time period because they didn't necessarily match the makeup trend. They weren't necessarily like this full glam matte look. Like, the Charlotte Tilbury look became more popular years later, and then the popularity of those products grew with it. But at the time it came out, like, don't get me wrong, people liked it, but it wasn't like it is today where every single brand is duping it now in 2025. And I just have to say, overall, like, if I had to describe palettes of this time, it was like a pop of blue. Everything had a pop of blue in it. Also, following up on the conversation we started earlier about influencer brands, 2018 was when Manny launched his brand, Lunar Beauty. Kristen Dominique launched Dominique Cosmetics, and Tati launched Halo Beauty, her supplement brand. So we were getting a ton of influencer brands. Like, we are really getting into like the influencer brand boom. Like, that bubble has definitely popped, and I don't think influencer brands are a thing as much as they were in this era, but everyone was making a brand at this time. And if they weren't doing a full brand, like, it was a ton of influencer collaborations with different beauty brands. Like, influencers could really sell beauty and sell makeup in this era. I say makeup, not beauty. People didn't care so much about skincare. Hair care, I'm sure, had also like a niche following, but like, when we would talk, okay, the beauty community, it was the makeup community, basically. Like, the other categories were very secondary, whereas now I feel like there's a really equal emphasis on skincare and makeup, but it was not the case then. And speaking of influencer collabs, was another collab between Morphe and Jaclyn Hill for the Vault collection. These were supposed to be the shades that didn't make it into the original palette. This one also had plenty of drama because the quality was not great, things were patchy. Generally, the trends were like highlighter. Also, it was like a million highlighter launches. Everyone loved highlighter and like the boldest highlights you could get. And it wasn't even just like single pan highlighters, like it was the glow kits, it was the multi-pan highlighter palettes. Like, oh my gosh, everything coming in a palette was really popular at this time. Like a face palette with everything in it, everything being in one, and really marketed as like, this is everything you need. I will say a really big general trend around this time was the boom of clean beauty. It obviously didn't start at this time, but it really gained momentum because 2018 was the year that Sephora launched their Clean at Sephora program. And this is really what kicked off that clean beauty movement, which I have thoughts on, but that could be another video. But a major launch this year, which will kind of get us into the drama section of 2018, was the Tarte Shape Tape Foundation. So this was kind of their response to their viral Tarte Shape Tape concealer. They came out with a foundation for it, but they did a terrible job with the shade range of this product.
Boom. The first 9 shades, they all kind of look very similar. It's interesting that there's so many different shades for lighter skin tones, and then when you get to the deeper skin tones, there's really only like 3. Tarte actually sent me the 3 darkest shades. One big swatch. This is Deep Honey, and this is Mahogany.
And rightfully, it got a ton of backlash. Again, I just want to call back to what I said earlier, like there really was a pre and post Fenty in the beauty space. Consumers made it known that this was unacceptable and that was not going to work. And Tarte's response to this, truly not great. They said something like, we were gonna release the other shades later because people get a tan in the summer, which is completely illogical. Like there are people that are tan and have darker skin year round. Like that made no sense. It was so poorly received from Tarte. And this was also at the time Tarte was starting to get more and more backlash for like their influencer trips, like tripping with Tarte. They still do those today and they still get a ton of backlash on them, but I just feel like people were getting fed up with Tarte. And then the biggest drama obviously is dramageddon, but when we will get there. But I also wanted to call out TanaCon happening this year. This was obviously not in the beauty community, but it happened on YouTube. Well, it didn't happen on YouTube, but it's the YouTube community. And I want to call this out because, again, just this storm of all these different events really shifted public perception of influencers. So without really getting into TanaCon, basically she hosted her own event because she wasn't going to VidCon. The event was a disaster. People waiting in lines all day, people having to leave. They had to reschedule the event. They canceled the rescheduled event. Like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. It was chaos. Okay though, dramageddon. And like I said, this was only dramageddon 1, but again, I think, okay, there's everything that I've talked about in this video. Like I think a lot of things led to the changing perception of the beauty community and specifically influencers within this space. But I think this is where it all just came to a head. Like the beauty community imploded after this. So the context here, as I mentioned earlier, there were a lot of friendships between big creators in this space, which we now can kind of see as probably being rather transactional. But I have to say, at the time, the viewers really liked seeing their favorite influencers hang out together, go to the movies together, just like be in videos with one another. And there was one really prominent bubble, group, shall we say, clique if you want to call it. And it was Jeffree Star, Manny MUA, Laura Lee, Nikita Dragon, and Gabriel Zamora. And somewhere along the way, they kind of privately fell out. And this was somewhat alluded to in the docu-series that Shane Dawson did with Jeffree Star. This was like a multi-part series on his channel, and the public perception of Shane Dawson was a bit different in 2018 than it is today. I think he was controversial, sure, but not nearly as disliked as he is now. And at the time, this docu-series was so well viewed. Like one of the videos from it is the most viewed video on Shane Dawson's channel of all time. It currently sits at 53 million views. And in this docu-series, he painted Jeffree Star in like a really beautiful light. As you probably know, Jeffree Star has quite the digital footprint. He's done some horrible things, and he was pretty polarizing at the time. I would say it was really split. Some of his fans were like diehard fans for him, but a lot of people wanted nothing to do with Jeffree Star. But I do think the public perception of him really shifted after this docu-series. And you know, it makes sense. You can completely spin the narrative and make someone look lovely in a series that they have helped making. But they were also supposed to be working on this palette together, which came out later. What ended up really kicking off Dramageddon was a tweet made by Gabriel Zamora that had the other four in it. I don't cuss on my channel, but it said, "B is bitter because without him we're doing better." And because people knew this friendship so well, and Jeffree obviously was absent from the photo, and there was also some like speculation before it, but all that coming together, it was very clear that this was a subtweet about Jeffree Star, which this tweet kicked it all off. What ended up happening next was that so many past very racist, very problematic tweets started resurfacing from all four creators, and specifically some really vile things posted by Laura Lee, which later led to each of them posting their own apology videos. And the most famous apology video of them was, of course, Laura Lee's, which is actually kind of in like the Hall of Fame for one of the worst YouTuber apologies of all time. The entire video, she's like bawling, crying. You can't even hear what she's saying. She later deleted that video and reposted an apology to her apology video because the original apology video was so poorly received, with her just making herself the victim. The group seemingly kind of threw Gabriel under the bus, which, I mean, he was the one who posted the photo, but then they all kept saying, we didn't know what the photo was, like we didn't know what he was gonna post, which probably wasn't true because they all liked and reposted it. Gabriel has then come out later and posted his like My Truth video and has spoken about it multiple times since, and has basically said that the group later came together to really carve out this like PR narrative and plan for how they want to move forward. Supposed to be a series of apology videos from each creator. They were supposed to like sequentially go up. They had this plan of like, you apologize first, you say this, then I say this. This really was like the downfall for these creators. I specifically think of Laura Lee in this, like she was losing hundreds of thousands of subscribers. Like she lost hundreds of thousands of subscribers. Like I just remember people like actively watching her social blade, which I used to be more of a thing at that time. You had like real-time updates. Like they were just going down, 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 down. These creators were losing sponsorships. Laura Lee's brand was supposed to be launching at Ulta this year. They were pulled, or her brand was pulled from Ulta. And I have to say, these creators really like never recovered from this. Like their careers were forever changed by this. I mean, they did terrible things and they did not handle it very well, but this was a really defining moment in the beauty community. And like I said, the opinion on influencers was already pretty rapidly changing, and I think this was just like the nail in the coffin for viewers becoming completely disillusioned with the beauty community. And I feel like people reference Dramageddon 2 way more, and maybe that's just because it's more recent. I also think it was just like larger in scale, like more people were following along with Dramageddon 2. But in terms of the impact on the culture in the beauty community, like I really found Dramageddon 1 to be more substantial. It really just kind of pulled the curtain back for viewers as well to see like these people aren't really friends. There was a lot of talk of like social climbing, especially from Manny, even though like truly like they were all benefiting from one another. But people started to see it really like as a business. They started to see these people as fake, as being problematic. Truly, the community was forever changed after 2018. Like I mentioned in the 2016 video, I think a lot of it was really building at that point, but this was the year everything came to a head, and it really has not been the same beauty community since. Let me know if I should continue this series. I could definitely do a 2019 video, but I hope you really enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know some of your highlights from those 2 years down below, and I will go ahead and see you in my next one. Bye.